Good morning, guys, or good afternoon, whether you're joining me from the present or the future. Welcome back to another FutureFight Vanguard video. Today we are going to be continuing on with V-EB14, the next stage set. Today we're going to be covering the Altmile deck, which is the Royal Paladin premier deck of this set. So yeah, we're caught up again. Like it's been a wild ride during all quarantine, but we're finally caught up. So if you guys haven't already, the last two videos that we released were the Chrono Fang videos and the Chrono Jet videos. So if you guys haven't checked those out already, definitely be sure to go back to the previous videos and watch those as we're trying to get all our stuff back up and going again. So today we're going to be covering Altmile. Like I said, this is the Royal Paladin deck of this set. Altmile basically has always focused on like grade 2s, so they have continued that theme onwards into standard as they're added now, and they're really just focused on grade 2s and giving the grade 2s extra bonuses and allowing the grade 2s to call themselves out of decks and stuff like that. I believe that this might just be the best deck out of this set, in my personal opinion. Now the other two are not too far behind Altmile, to be fair, but I do think that Altmile is probably the most consistent deck and probably the best deck of the set. So with that being said, we're going to get right into the deck, but if you guys haven't already, be sure to subscribe down below, click the bell button so you don't have to miss any videos from us going forward. Don't forget to like the video if you like it and share the video if you love it. Also, be sure to comment down below letting me know your thoughts on the video, maybe some tips and tricks for other new people playing the build or things that you would play that I am not playing or something like that, because this is just, you know, our FutureFight series is to get people informed on the decks and just have a kind of like a base build for you guys to have. Not to say that my build is the perfect build or that it can't be edited or anything like that. Is just to give you guys a bare bones so that you guys can get on your way to building your perfect version of the deck. But also be sure to check out our social medias down in the description down below, which includes Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and our new LPA Empire Twitch. So it's going to be a Twitch channel that is combining both of my platforms. So I'm going to be streaming some Cardfight stuff on there. I'm going to be streaming some anime stuff on there. I'm going to be streaming some video game stuff on there. We've been playing some Pokemon on there recently, so I will be streaming Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So if you guys want to set that on your schedule or your clock or whatever and just come through, that would be much appreciated. Definitely want to bring people to the stream so that we can all have some fun together playing some games. And last but not least, don't forget to check out the join button if you guys are interested in channel memberships as well. That includes stuff like getting into the private Discord that is like for both my platforms, and getting additional stuff with the channel like videos and requested videos, tutoring, all that good stuff. And be sure to check out our second channel, Let's Plays Animes, if you guys are interested in anime, animation, or video games. But with that being said, let's get right into Altmile. So the hardest hitting deck of the next stage set, Altmile himself. Now it's actually kind of interesting because Altmile wasn't really even good, I don't think, like in G format. Like I don't think Altmile rivaled the other two. Like I think Asha and Chrono Jet were both better than Altmile in its day. So it's interesting now that Altmile is now better than Chrono Jet and Asha. So the reason why that I said that I think that this deck is the most consistent and possibly the best deck is because it has everything that Chrono Jet and Asha have, but then it has additional things on top of that. So the way that Asha hits hard, Altmile hits just as hard. The way that Chrono Jet sometimes builds advantage, Altmile builds advantage. And then it has something that they both do not have, is very, very solid shield options and defensive options. So it has an amazing offensive options, and then it also has amazing defensive capabilities as well. So let's get right into that and why and how all the cards work together. So we're going to be starting off with our grade 3s. First, we have our 4 of our ace card, which is 4 Aerial Divine Knight Altmile. This is the main Altmile grade 3 that you want to be on at all times. However, I do go for the other Altmile first. It just depends on like what my hand is. Like if I have two Aerial Divine Knight Altmiles in my hand, I'm going to go Aerial Divine Altmile twice. Like I'm going to ride it twice. However, if I only have one Aerial Divine Knight Altmile and one Blue Sky Knight Altmile, I'm going to tend to ride the Blue Sky Knight Altmile and then the Aerial Divine Knight later, because you really do want to meet that condition of having the Altmile and the Soul, because your Vanguard getting a crit is very important to damage deny your opponent and keep them unable to take any attacks without dying. So let's talk about Aerial Divine Knight Altmile's two abilities. They're both Vanguard abilities. The first one is a continuous that says if you have no face-up cards in your damage zone, all of your grade 2 units get plus 10,000 power, plus 5,000 shield, and if your card or if your soul has a card with Altmile in its name, those units get plus 1 critical. So really just helps, like I said, it gives your Vanguard a crit, but the most important part of this skill, low-key, is the power and the shield that it gives to the grade 2s. Also, sorry, I misspoke. It's not the Vanguard that gets a crit, it's your grade 2s that get a crit. So you really do want to meet that Altmile condition, because then your grade 2 rear guards will be gaining an extra crit. So if you go like Force 2 in this deck, like it'll be really hard for your opponent to deal with certain stuff, because there's so many attacks like have like high levels of crit, and they might die from no guarding any attack. So, and since the columns are already big by themselves, because you have like 10Ks boosting each other, which is like 20K base, and then you have 10Ks from Altmile, like the columns easily reach like 40 to 50 to 60K. So it can be really hard for your opponent to deal with, and also really, really good for you as well, because then the grade 2s just sit on the board, and then you can intercept with them. And in combination with cards like Starlight Violinist, you can intercept from the back row, which means that all of your you can make a field full of grade 2s on your rear guard circle, and then all 5 of those grade 2s are solid 10K shields, which is up to 50K shield that's on your board. So very, very good defensively, very, very good offensively. Let's talk about the second skill. So the second skill is a Vanguard activation skill, which means that during your main phase, whenever you want, you can Counter Blast 1 and Soul Blast 1 once per turn, and then you can call up to 1 grade 2 from your deck and 1 grade 2 from your drop zone and shuffle your deck. This is very, very, very important, because it allows us to run like our build in a special way, because we know that we can't lose cards to the drop zone. So for example, we only run 1 Tion and 1 Rodley, and that's because of Aerial Divine Knight Altmile mixed with Gamoris and its utility as well. So it allows you to get back cards that you already lost, so you don't have to worry about fighting like Retire or anything like that. In fact, you don't even have to worry about intercepting. You prefer to intercept, because you know that Aerial Divine Knight Altmile is going to bring your cards back from the drop zone. So very, very good. Alright, now let's talk about the next Altmile, which is for Blue Sky Knight Altmile. This is our backup grade 3, obviously not even close to as good as Aerial Divine Knight Altmile, but it does have its usefulnesses, or it does have its uses as well. Let's talk about its 2 skills. So first skill is a continuous Vanguard rearguard skill that says during your turn, if you have no face-up cards in your damage zone, this unit gets plus 15,000 power. So this card becomes a beater by itself. That can even be used on the rearguard circle. So if you're on Aerial Divine Knight Altmile and you happen to find this card and you don't have a grade 2 that you want to place down, boom, you can place this down, and it's a 28K swinger by itself, not even counting boosts. So if you're boosting with something like that, it can be like easily 48 with a grade 2 boost. And then let's talk about its second Vanguard skill, which is an activation skill that's once per turn. Counter Blast 1 and discard a card from your hand. So it's just like Aerial Divine Knight Altmile, except for instead of a Soul Blast, you discard a card from your hand. And then you get to search your deck for 2 grade 2 cards, reveal them, and put them into your hand and shuffle your deck. Now let's talk about a key difference of the 2 cards and what you want to use with the cards. So Aerial Divine Knight Altmile, a key difference between this card and the Blue Sky Knight is basically that Blue Sky Knight adds the grade 2s to your hand. Aerial Divine Knight Altmile calls them directly to the board. That's important for cards like Liverot that can only activate their ability when it comes from hand. So if you go into Blue Sky Knight Altmile, you can search like 2 Liverots to make sure that you're getting the most off of their abilities. I usually just search Slayman, because I want the chance to be able to bounce my cards back if I need to, like based off their damage triggers and all that stuff. So mid battle phase, I like being able to control stuff like that. So I usually search Slayman, but that's just me. You can just search Liverot if you're going for Blue Sky Knight Altmile. You can also, with Aerial Divine Knight Altmile, just search like Tion or Rodley, whatever you happen to need at the moment. And that's the good thing about this deck, is that as far as like grade 2s, it's such a good toolbox. There's so many different ways to get your grade 2s that you want out. You don't ever have to worry about like, you know, getting stuck with a certain grade 2 and not being able to have access to your other grade 2s. So moving on to our grade 2s, which is the most important grade of the deck. So we have 4 counter-offensive Knight Slayman. So what Slayman does is it has 2 abilities. The first one is a Vanguard only ability that says when placed, you can look at the top 7 cards of your deck, call up to 1 card with Altmile in its card name to rearguard, and shuffle your deck. Now you might say, I'm calling my grade 3 to rearguard, not getting it to hand. Wait for it. There's a second skill as well. Vanguard Rearguard Circle, when it attacks, Soul Blast 1, return a rearguard in another column to your hand, and this unit gets plus 5,000 power. So this is what makes this card so good, these 2 skills in combination, because if you're grade locked or you just need a different Altmile, you can actually just search top 7 by writing this card, get the Altmile that you need, attack with it, so you're getting, you know, a plus off of it when you're attacking your opponent for advantage, and then you can also just attack with Slayman next and use Slayman skill to bounce the other Altmile to your hand. So that's just very, very good, and it's a very, very good way to get another Altmile if you don't have the one that you desire at the moment. Moving on to our next grade 2, we have 4 Absolute Blade Liverot. So what Liverot does is when placed from hand on the Vanguard or Rearguard Circle, you can counterblast 1, search your deck for up to 1 grade 2 card, call it to an open Rearguard Circle, and shuffle your deck. And if you have no face-up cards in your damage zone, you may also pay Soul Blast 1 for this cost. So this card is very, very good because another card that just toolboxes out your grade 2s, gets you whatever you want, and it even cannot even be stopped by your opponent damage denying you, because you can play this card, and if you don't have a counterblast available to you, you can just Soul Blast 1 instead. So this is what makes that early game rush like really, really potent. Combined with Slayman and calling a grade 3, you can also call like Liverot and get like, you know, Starlight Violinist or something like that, which allows you to just go really ham and really aggressive from the start of attacking. Moving on to our next grade 2, we have 4 Starlight Violinist. Starlight Violinist is actually a very key card in the deck, and it's what allows all of the columns to be really, really big, and it also is what allows you, ironically, to have your defensive option as well of intercepting from the back row. So Starlight Violinist's skill is continuous on the Rearguard Circle. If you have no face-up cards in your damage zone, all of your grade 2s on Rearguard get boost, and they can intercept from the back row. So very, very important that you have no face-up cards in your damage zone, which means that on the defensive, you want to make sure that you're not taking any damage if you're planning on using this card's skill to block. So you want to block first and take damage later. Moving on to our last grade 2s in the deck, we have 1 Sage of Imminent Virtue Tion and 1 Knight of Strenuous Effort Rodley, and we're going to talk about why we run both. So Tion has 2 abilities. The first one is continuous Rearguard Circle. If you have 5 or less units, this unit cannot attack or be attacked. And the second Rearguard ability is during your turn, this unit gets plus 10,000 power. So it can be a 19k base by itself whenever it's on your field during your turn. However, in order for it to be an attacker, you have to have 6 units. You have to have a full board. Now, this is cool because in combination with Starlight Violinist, it could be a booster because it says nothing about boosting. So you can boost it without having 5 units. You just can't attack with it if you don't have 5 units. So we run one of this just for like an additional power. I usually put this behind my Vanguard to make my Vanguard a more threatening column, being 42, and it's really hard for your opponent to block. And then also we run 1 Rodley, and this is if our opponent is dealing way too much damage to us in the early game. And Altmile, like one of their main problems when I first started playing the deck myself, is that if your opponent deals you a lot of damage, if you don't have a way to counterblast hard or like use a lot of counterblasts at once, you'll actually start falling behind because you won't be able to use your skills to your full advantage because all your counterblasts won't be face down. So I've definitely had that problem in the deck before, so that's why I have 1 Rodley, because it can either be searched by either one of our Altmiles, whether we want to grab it with Aerial Divine Knight or regular Altmile, and then every time after that you can grab it back from drop zone with Aerial Divine Knight Altmile if your opponent just happens to pop it. The only way that you're scared about this card not surviving is if you're playing against a deck that binds like, you know, Vanquisher, Narukami, or Link Jokers, Deleters, anything like that. And in that case, you would just not call this card out as early unless you really, 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 really needed to. Moving on to our grade 1s, we have 4 Laurel Knight Sisylas. This is our, when placed from hand, look at top 3 or top 5 for a grade 3 card, generic as all of the clans have been getting it. but they all have a different first ability depending on the mechanic of their clan. So the first ability is Continuous Vanguard Rearguard. During your turn, if you have no face-up cards in the damage zone, this unit gets plus 5,000 power. So this is also relevant when you first ride, and like let's say that you're going second. Your opponent rides, and then you ride, and technically since you have no damage, you don't have any face-up cards in your damage zone. So this unit will get plus 5,000 power, and it'll be swinging on your opponent's Vanguard for 13, which is very important because they can't just no pass the attack with a critical trigger, which is something that a lot of people like to do during turn 1 and turn 2. So just making that extra 5k column difference can really be the difference in you dealing a damage to your opponent or not dealing damage at all. The secondary skill, I don't really think it's worth like talking about because I did say that it's one of the generic things, but I will say the secondary skill just for the people that are new out there. So the secondary skill is when placed from hand on the Vanguard or Rearguard circle, you can look at the top 5 cards of your deck, reveal up to 1 grade 3 from among them, put it into your hand, shuffle your deck, and then if you put a card, you discard a card. So usually with this discard cost, I either get rid of my quick shield ticket or a grade 2, knowing that I have multiple ways to get my grade 2s back. I don't want to discard anything too big. I, under some case scenarios, might discard a trigger if my units in my hand are just really good or I really need them. So just be careful with what you discard from Sisylis. Next up, we have 4 Little Sage Marin. In all of the playtests, I actually never ended up using this card because the deck like goes way too fast before I even see Little Sage Marin. But in the case that you do play like an early game and with Altmile and you do like need to counterblast and get advantage, Little Sage Marin is definitely a solid card to be running. Its skill is Rearguard Circle once per turn. When your other Rearguard is placed in the same column as this unit, counterblast 1, draw a card, and this unit gets plus 3,000 power. So it becomes an 11k attacker or booster, whatever you need it for during that time. And then it also draws you a card, but at the cost of counterblast 1. So you also do want to be careful, but also it helps you counterblast. So it's another engine for you to go down to 0 counterblast so that all your skills can be active. And for our last grade 1 in the deck, we're running 3 Cloud Lancer Gamoris. Gamoris' skill is when placed on Rearguard Circle, put up to 1 grade 2 card from your drop zone on the top or bottom of your deck, and then if you put a card, this unit gets plus 10,000 power until the end of the turn. Really, really good for recycling your grade 2s, especially if you don't have a grade 2 in your deck that you want to call off of Aerial Divine Knight Altmile. It's kind of later in the game. You can play Gamoris, have it get plus 10k, put a grade 2 back that you want to search, and then use Aerial Divine Knight Altmile skill to search that grade 2 and a grade 2 from your drop. And then that, you know, fulfills the condition but also thins your deck. So very, 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 very good. Then for our grade 0s, we run 8 crit, 4 draw, and 4 heal. For our crits, we're running 3 Bringer of Good Luck Epona, 3 Flogel, 2 Future Knight Lu, 4 Flash Shield Isolt, and 4 Healing Pegasus, our new heal. You got to be running the new heals in the new G decks, or you're not going to be healing properly. You need your Cyqualia to activate. And so in order to do that, you have to run the new heals. There's no other way. No, I'm kidding, guys. You can run whatever heal you want. I personally like the art of the new one, so I'm running the new one. And then for our starter, I skipped over it, but it's Shining Knight Milius. This is our draw card starter that every single standard starter has. So when rode upon, we draw a card, and then if our opponent's Vanguard is grade 1 or greater, when we do that, then we get a quick shield ticket into our hand, which usually helps with cards like Sisylis. So with that being that, that has been the deck portion of the video. So let's get right into the games portion of the video. So game 1, I'm actually playing against MLB, the new MLB deck. Majesty Lord Blaster, for those of you who don't know what MLB stands for. So we're talking about who's going first. He goes first. And then he rides Sisylis. So I actually thought that he was playing Altmile because he rode Sisylis, but turns out he wasn't. So I also ride Sisylis and look at top 5, and I whiff as well. So I attack him. I don't get any trigger. He does hit a defensive trigger. He rides Blaster Dark and discards a card so that he can get Twin Drive. He does get a critical trigger. We get a draw on defense, which is really good as well, because we actually draw into a draw PG, which is very useful against this deck. Because we have 2 PGs in our hand now. So we actually rode Liverot here, and we were thinking about what we wanted to get. So we end up getting Rodley because I didn't want a way to counterblast that other counterblast. So we used Rodley's skill to get 10k and block it off. Then we used Sisylis to check top 5 for a grade 3. And then we didn't have a grade 2 to discard, or we would have discarded the grade 2. Just so we could use Gamoris, but we didn't have that. So we're able to push our opponent to 3 damage really early. Our opponent plays a board and starts attacking us for pretty big. But he doesn't have the setup that he needs to have, so we're able to just, PG and block his turn kind of easy. So next turn, we go Force 2. We ride the Blue Sky Knight Altmile. We counterblast 1 and we get 2 Slaymans, like I said before. So we play the 2 Slaymans to the board and we play a Gamorreus, putting Rodley back to the bottom of the deck. So we attack for 41, 2 crit, and we check in Aerial Divine Knight Altmile and a Sisyphus, which is good because we did need an Aerial Divine Knight Altmile. So we attack for a column and then 28, so we push him to 5 damage. And then our opponent says that he's thinking. He has 2 grade 3s in his hand and a grade 1, so he chooses to use the dragon skill, Field Feather Dragon, to place over the card that was already there so that he has 3 open, so that he draws 3 and then he has to call 3 to the board. So obviously you guys can see like he doesn't have the best options to call cards to board. So we attack it. We take his first attack. We get a draw trigger on defense. He adds a card and he puts 2 cards in the soul and gets force markers. We just PG it. Unfortunately, MLB doesn't have guard restrict, so it's kind of not threatening in that way if you have a PG. And then he attacks 23 to our rear guard, which we are more than happy to let him have, knowing that we're about to go into Area Divine Knight Altmile, and we will get it from our drop zone anyways. So we end up getting Tion from our drop zone and Starlight Violinist from our deck. And then we play a Gamorreus, putting a grade 2 to the bottom. And then all of our grade 2s get plus 10k and 5k shield. So our Vanguard attacks with 2 crit. He no guards. We get a heal trigger. And we get a Blue Sky Knight Altmile. So he takes 2 damage, and that is the game. He has nowhere near enough shield that it would take to guard all of this effectively. So he just bites the dust, or bites the sword, we should say. So game 2, we're playing against the same guy who's playing MLB. He wanted that clean run back. So he goes first again. He rides Sisyphus, looks at top 5, whiffs. We ride Marin this time, which is unfortunate because we have literally 2 grade 1s that we prefer to ride that are not Marin. But he rides Blaster Dark, and this time we throw down a 10k for a no pass, or sorry, a 2 to pass. We do get Slayman. We do get an Altmile off the top, so Altmile becomes 28 by itself, and we attack for 10. Our opponent blocks it. We attack for 10 again. Our opponent blocks it, and then we attack for 38, which our opponent takes. Our opponent plays Majesty Lord Blaster, looks at top 5 for grade 3s, whiffs, and then he also uses the skill of Liverot to get Blaster Blade. He blows up my card with Blaster Blade, and he attacks for 33. We are actually talking about here that when he played his Blaster Blade, he actually used Pluck Enchanter first. So he tried to countercharge, but I was trying to tell him he couldn't countercharge, but I ended up letting him take it back, so it's cool. I no guard his Vanguard. He gets his triple drive, 2 crit, we take it, and then his other attack, 2 crit, we get double draw trigger on defense, so that's pretty broken. I pretty much knew from this point that I was in a pretty solid position to win the game. So we go for Blue Sky Knight Altmile. We start to call all of our grade 2s. We get Liverot, call a Starlight Violinist, and then we use Rodley to counterblast the rest of our cards. So all of our cards have boost now that are grade 2s. So we attack, he hits the crit, and then he's able to block our Vanguard for 2. We do get a heal trigger and a grade 1, and then we attack his Vanguard with our last rear guard. He gets a draw on defense. He sets up his next Majesty Lord Blaster turn. He attacks us for 36, which we guard with a heal and an intercept. He goes for the attack and gets more force markers, which we PG. And then he attacks us for 40. You guys can see that here I told him no thinning, no winning, because literally I don't think MLB thins at all compared to Altmile. So then he just takes 2 damage before that and concedes, but I continue to go on after he leaves just to see what I would have checked. So I would have done my assault turn, and then I would have checked a critical and an Aerial Divine Knight Altmile, which is more than enough to finish him off with his hand. So there's no way that he was living that. I think he would have to double 6 damage heal, and even then it probably wouldn't be enough. So now we're loading up the last and final game, Altmile Game 3. So we're actually playing against a fellow Altmile player whose name is Iki Babyface. Shout out to Air Gear, because very underrated anime that no one has seemed to watch, so I got real hype when I saw that name. But we go first, we do Sisyphus. He does Sisyphus and gets Aerial Divine Knight. We take 2 damage because he does get a crit on turn 1. However, we Liverot into Rodney, and then we attack for 10, and we attack for 20. Then he does his own Slayman. He actually does get the grade 3. And so he attacks our rear guard for 13, which we let it go purely because we wanted to have a counterblast. And the only way that he was going to attack our Vanguard was if we just took the rear guard, because I had a feeling that he would just use his Vanguard to attack rear guard if we did block. So we search out Starlight Violinist, and we go for Liverot. And I actually was like telling him to hold on here because I was checking that I could boost with Tion. So we do attack with Tion. It's 47 to crit. He no guards, and then we attack for 20 exactly. So he blocks that. He goes into Arrow Divinite Altmile himself for the first ride. And then he plays Knight of Going Alone Herald. Uses the skill of Arrow Divinite Altmile, Counterblast 1 and Soul Blast 1 to get a grade 2 from his drop zone, which ends up being Slayman. And then he gets a grade 2 from his deck, which ends up being Liverot. So he places the 2 on the board. He attempts to use Liverot's skill, and I tell him that he cannot because Liverot only activates when placed from hand, which is what I was telling you guys in the deck profile portion of the video. Like, just be very wary of which cards work with which cards. So this is like a common rookie mistake of people using this deck. But he did say that it's his first time using the deck, so it's like no problem, you know. It's no big deal. I let him take it back. So now he chooses to get a different grade 2 as his deck target. He chooses to get Lamorak. He calls Lamorak to the rearguard circle, and then he plays a Blue Sky Knight Altmile and a Starlight Violinist in the back row. So now he has boosting live for all his grade 2s and intercept from the back row as well alive. So we no guard his Vanguard. He does check a crit. We do check no damage triggers, which is pretty unfortunate. But we are able to block his turn and go for our own. So we use Arrow Divinite skill, Counterblast 1, Soul Blast 1, and then we can call a grade 2, which we call Slayman, and then we get Rodley. So we use Rodley's skill to flip everything back face down. Everything gets plus 10 except for Rodley and Tion, which get plus 20. So we attack for 42 to crit. He does us with a 1 to pass, and then he intercepts with Lamorak for a 2 to pass. We don't check any triggers. Instead, we check 2 grade 3s, which is pretty much the most awful thing that could happen. However, because if we checked crits, like, he actually wouldn't have been able to block my attack. So, yeah, so we actually just got shafted there. But as you guys can see here, we PG Vanguard. We guard for 36, and then we guard for 46. However, here's the problem. When I draw a card, it wasn't a grade 2. And then I rode so that I can get an additional Force 2 out there. But all in all, our boards are not that, attacks are not that big. So we attack for 3 crit, then we attack for 2 crit. He no guards. We don't check any triggers again, which that's 2 times now that we could have sealed the game. And then he blocks our rear guard with ease. So he goes into his own Arrow Divinite turn by Counterblasting 1, Soul Blasting 1, getting 2 of his grade 2s. And then I knew that, you know, there's no way that I could live. I'm at 5 damage. I have 2 cards in hand. One is an unblockable card, and then these columns are just too big, and they have like 3 crit. So there was absolutely no way that I was winning here, but I've never been one of those people to just quit. I always let my opponent finish out the game, so that's what I'm allowing him to do here instead of just quitting or something like that, or conceding. So I no guard his Vanguard. He drive checks 2 non-triggers, and then we got animated because we have an Altmile as our 6 damage. But that has been the FutureFight Vanguard video for Altmile. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, like I said before, subscribe and click the bell button so you don't have to miss any videos going forward from us. Like the video if you like it. Share the video with your friends if you love it. Also, be sure to upvote us on Reddit. Upvote us so that we can post more stuff on Reddit. But with that being said, check out the social medias, Let's Plays Animes, LPA Empire, the Twitch, and the join button down below as well if you're interested in channel membership. But with that being said, this has been Josh from Cardfight Empire, and I'll see you guys on tomorrow's Asha video. Peace, guys.